Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Women Today. Well, this is our post-show Women Today podcast. We've had a fascinating chat this afternoon with my studio guests all about Hop Tu Naa, it being October 31st. I'm still joined by Ruby Biscoe-Taylor from Biskee Brisht, and we've also got Katie King from Manx National Heritage, and we have James Franklin from Culture Vannin with us. Laura, I wasn't party to this, and so I want to know, because you came in the studio when we came on air this afternoon and said, oh, you wouldn't believe the ghost stories we've just been chatting about. I need to know more. What were you saying that I didn't hear?
Well, we got onto a lovely conversation that terrified us all, so we've got goosebumps at the moment. We were talking about ghost stories on the Isle of Man, so obviously we have a real legacy of mystery and magic, and at this time there's a lot of ghost stories going around. Ruby, I believe you're going on a ghost hunt this evening.
I am tonight in Castle Rushen, yep.
Yeah, so Katie was telling us about some spooky goings-on that might have happened in some of the Manx National Heritage sites.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's terrifying working for Manx National Heritage. Part of my job is to, I put on events and things like that around the site. So in recent years, I've put on a few events at Castle Rushen. Now, obviously, everyone knows many ghost stories are connected with Castle Rushen, and generally we don't really talk about it because, you know, it's up to you to decide if ghosts are around, and brilliantly Isle of Man Ghost Tours do their tours, but I thought I'd share one of my own ghost stories of something that happened to me. So Castle Rushen is a lovely place, obviously, but in the evenings when you're on your own, it can be quite a daunting sort of building, I suppose. And we have a theatre group called Labyrinth, so we when we rehearse for Castle Rushen projects, we're rehearsing in the evenings, and then my actors leave at about 9:30 at night, and then I have to lock up the castle on my own. And I had done that every rehearsal for 6 times, 7 times without any problem whatsoever. But then this one particular evening, I was doing what I always do, going up to Castle. I must say, I don't have the gift or the sixth sense of anything. I'm very much blasé and don't notice anything around me, so that's fine. So I've never been scared, really. And then I was at the very, very top of the castle. That's how you lock from the top coming down. And I just had this overwhelming sensation that I had to get out of the castle. I can't explain it. It was like I was being not physically pushed, but I had to get out of that castle, and I just remember sprinting down the spiral staircase, just terrified, like I was being chased, although there was nothing behind me and there was nothing touching me. And I ran all the way down to the castle, locked the bottom door, and just ran out of the castle. And it wasn't until I actually physically left the confines of the castle that I could sort of breathe properly. And I still don't know what that was, but I've been terrified of that castle ever since. And then because I share that story, many people that used to work there or still work there like to tell me their story. So I now know way too much. And all I'm going to say is I would never anymore go into the wedding room, actually, the registry.
So that's where you felt it?
No, because of the stories people have told me about that wedding room. And when I go in there again at night, that to me is the most terrifying place. And have one more story related to Margaret Quain if you want.
Oh, yes, because we were talking about Margaret Quain on the show, and you can listen back on demand if you missed it. So tell us the story about Margaret.
So I mentioned our Labyrinth Theatre Group. Mm-hmm. So we, in our first show that we were doing, we were talking about Margaret Quain. So we had 2 characters in one of the upper rooms talking about Margaret Quain and whether she would be found guilty of witchcraft or not. So it was a 2 double-hander, and the end of their scene, they had to blow out a candle and then plunge the room into darkness to sort of scare the audience. So we were concerned about the fire alarm going off because of smoke. So we had deactivated the smoke alarm in that particular room, the sensor had gone. So we did that performance maybe 6 or 7 times, and then midway through the day, everything was going well. They blew out the candle, and at the exact point the fire alarm went off. So we didn't know what to do. The audience thought it was part of the play, but they're right at the top of the castle. And I was leading the tour, so I said, "Oh, right, well, we better leave." And they kept thinking it was part of the play. So as we left, there was a wedding on somewhere else. The fire brigade came, but the alarm was actually going off in the wedding registry room. It wasn't going off in the castle. They're completely separate buildings, so they couldn't understand it. So it wasn't our candle that set off this alarm anyway. And the alarm kept going off. Every time we did that scene, the alarm kept going off. So in the end, we had to turn the alarm off because the fibre kept coming. And then it was the next day, the actresses looked really shook up. And I said, why are you shaking up? Did the fire alarm scare you? And they said, oh, it's just that just before we did the scene, we said, come on, Margaret Quain, show us what you're made of. And that's when,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's a funny old place.
Oh my word! There are. We were also saying beforehand, there are definitely places and sort of whether it's buildings or locations on the island where sometimes you just feel a little bit uncomfortable. And Ruby, you and I both were talking about a place, just sort of past Port Greenwich there, which we're not sure of the name of the area, but that we both feel a little bit uncomfortable around and don't really.
Driving through there is really creepy.
Yeah, it just feels a little bit.
Lock the doors and looking out the windows.
I think I do pick up my pace a little tiny bit as I go around that area. James, I can hear you coughing there. I was going to come to you now. Are you able to talk? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What do you make of this kind of thing? You seem like a very level-headed kind of guy. Would you go along with the... Am I wrong, first of all? Are you not very level-headed?
Most of the time. During work hours, yes.
Yes. Okay, so what do you think about the idea of ghost stories and the like? Do you think there's any sort of purchase in it? Do you think it's all nonsense? Or?
Well, I like to suspend judgment on them. I like to let them be. And so I as a degree, I did philosophy, actually, which was an awful lot about delving into truth and all this sort of stuff. And so I feel quite mature or grown up about my ideas of truth and reality to be quite relaxed about it. And be like, well, I don't feel like I need to believe in certain truth one way or the other. And all these stories I quite like to allow within my idea of reality, to be honest, which is a very pompous answer, but yeah, I think so.
I think that was actually a very level-headed answer, and so I am going to stick with the suggestion that you are level-headed. Laura, on the show yesterday, we were talking a little bit about sort of stories that we've or moments we've experienced in our lives that we find sort of very difficult to explain, and I mentioned something that happened to me on air. There was something you told me off air that we didn't actually get to mention, but since you mentioned it to me, something rather spooky has happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, so again, talking about that kind of the locations that you feel a bit scared, I was driving along the Gansey road maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'd been to my mum's in Port St Mary, and it was the middle of winter, so it was very dark. It was relatively early evening, maybe 8 o'clock, and as I switched my full beam headlights on, I was just completely aware of a female presence wearing quite a distinctive outfit walking across the road at exactly the same time as my car was veering forward, and we would have crossed paths, and I was just completely shocked and looked straight away in my back mirror.
So you would have hit her?
I would have hit her, but there was no kind of feeling or anything. I mean, it was such a split second. And I mean, I'm quite sceptical, although I love to indulge myself in a ghost story. So I still can't say for sure, yes, I saw a ghost. But I was just overwhelmed by it was a sense of a woman, and she was there. And so, yeah, I would have hit her, looked in my rear wind screen, and nothing was there. But I didn't. It was just weird. I kind of carried on driving, and it was only about 5 minutes later that I thought, that was really weird. Something happened there. So, yeah, and maybe it's just having had that experience. Every time I drive past it now, it makes me think, and I kind of get that shiver. But I'm quite open to the idea of seeing something, but I think I prefer the idea of it than it actually happening to me.
But there was apparently something a bit unusual on sort of in a similar area. You were saying you found out before the show that there may well have been something that had happened there.
Yeah, I think was it UKT was saying
it's quite well, in fact, it was the Fabulous Ghost Tours guys. They talk quite a lot about road ghosts on the Isle of Man, and that is one of the areas they talk about road ghosts. So.
And these are presumably people who've been involved in accidents, maybe, or something?
I assume so. Yeah, you have to speak to them. I just remember them telling a horrible story about when you drive along the mountain road at night on your own, and you feel like there's someone in the passenger seat. There probably is.
Oh my word, that's horrible.
But I did have to come in there with a level head there and say, if you were a ghost and you had the ability to take yourself anywhere, wouldn't you just appear there rather than getting in a car?
get a lift.
Yeah. Seems a bit too mortal, doesn't it?
It does a little bit, yeah.
So-
Just sort of sitting down beside someone you'd fly, really, wouldn't you? Probably would just sort of appear, like you say. Ruby, what is this ghost tour that you're going on this evening?
I'm going to the Castle Rushen one. So I've been
Do
a baby.
you still want to go, having heard
I
what
do.
you just heard?
I love a good ghost story, but we've opted for the early one. We're going at 6 p.m. So I thought not
Very
too
wise.
threatening. They're doing a 6 p.m., 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. and I said there is no way I'm going there at 10 at night. We'll be done by 11:30. Be so horrible. So we're getting on the 6 p.m. so that'll be fun. And it's really dark already. So
It is, yeah.
definitely going to be petrified, but be nice. Yeah, go to
You can
Castletown
sing
Ghost.
to yourself as you go.
Yes.
It's fine.
Hop Tu Naa is true.
that would completely freak everyone out, I think. Katie, is she ill-advised doing this?
No, I think it's very brave of you. No, from my experience, I've done that ghost tour. I don't find that remotely scary because you're in a big group. It's when you're on your own.
Yeah.
And those stories come back to you. That's when it's terrifying.
I have to say, the thing that's still sticking in my head right now is not actually the ghost story. It's the fact that you had the responsibility of locking up Castle Rushen from the top down. That is amazing. Is it
a lot
like
easier
Is
than
it a
it
big
sounds.
iron skeleton key? Is that what
Sadly
you
not,
have?
no.
Oh.
Well, we do have those keys, but mostly as you bolt the doors shut. As you shut the doors, it's a bolt basically,
Yes.
and then it's got a master key on the main ones. It's quite disappointing actually.
Oh, I want it to be like a foot-long, big, heavy key that you
We
have to
do
sort of
have them.
drag
We do have them, but
behind
they've
you.
been the bits you actually lock and secure on alarm. They're
Little Yale key.
Yeah.
Oh, how
You know what I've
disappointing.
always found really scary is their animals and how they can potentially pick
Yes,
up.
they react.
Yeah. Have you ever had anything with Milo?
Not with my dog, but actually a small child, in the studio where I used to live in a place that had a music studio downstairs, a very old Georgian building. Peter Kelly can tell you all about it.
Again,
It is
get
a
that
little
feeling
bit,
down there.
You do. And I was down in the studio and I had a friend of mine, Claire, was there with her son, and she was doing some singing. And it's the basement has been turned into this studio. It's this music studio. You know it,
Yeah, I've
Ruby,
been,
I think,
yeah.
don't you? And so there's sort of like a little area where we have the vocal booth, and then there's a double door to create soundproofing through to what would be the engineer studio. And there's just a glass window in these double doors so you can see through to the person that's singing. And it is very dark down there, and it does feel a little bit uncomfortable late at night. Anyway, so we were down there, and Claire had gone up to use the facilities upstairs. So I was there with her son. And her son was very young at the time. I think he was maybe about maybe 4 years old or something. So we're sitting in the sort of engineers area, and all of a sudden, her son turned towards these glass windows, and I said it was quite dark, pointed to something that he could see through the glass windows, half screamed and half cried, and just kept looking at me and pointing as if, can't you see this thing I'm looking at? It's not very nice. And I'm sort of sitting there thinking, I don't know what to do. And the awful thing was, I couldn't bring myself to look. So this point, I sort of had a quick look and thought, but there's nothing there. And then immediately looked away thinking, if there is, I don't want to know what it is. So yeah, and he only stopped crying when his mum came back downstairs. So actually, he could have just been saying, where's my mum? But he was 4 years old, and so he could have just said that. But no, he just
that's
just
an
pointed.
interesting area of Douglas, because that was the original sort of slum area of Douglas. There's a lot of overcrowding, a lot of infant mortality in that area. So right before they built the Loch Prom, and they built Victoria. Is it Victoria Street?
Victoria Road.
Yeah, okay.
As opposed to Street, Victoria
it's Victoria
Road.
Street.
Oh, well, so it's probably
doesn't matter.
okay
You're fine up
then.
Victoria Road.
We're fine. But yeah, that was genuinely quite terrifying, and Claire remembers it too. And yeah, she said when she came down, he was very distressed, and she didn't know why. So there you go. Yeah. So Isle of Man, lovely place to live.
Don't have nightmares.
Don't have nightmares, exactly. Whatever you're doing this evening, do have fun. And we will speak to you on the show tomorrow. We've got plenty going on the show tomorrow, so do tune in. Thanks very much to my guests. We've just been chatting with Ruby Biscoe-Taylor from Biskee Brisht, with Katie King from Manx National Heritage, and with Jane Franklin from Culture Vannin, and Laura Gill, who's a bit scared now.
Yeah, I'm not going to sleep on my own tonight.
Hop Tu Naa, tra-la-la. It's fine, everybody, it's fine.
Women Today. Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds, and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin, or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.